I work with dozens of ecom brands ranging from six figure to $1 billion client that we have for the last 2 years. And I audit over 15 different Klaviyo accounts per month. And one of the biggest issues that I have noticed is that a lot of brands don't realize that they actually have a declining email performance. And on the surface, your email list actually looks healthy. You've got great deliverability, you've got good open rates, you've got good click rates, but under the surface, you actually see your revenue decreasing. You see your revenue plateau, or ultimately, you're just not scaling on the retention side of things. And this is due to what I like to call the silent email list killer. And it's actually a lot more common than you think. There's so many brands that undergo this exact same process. And so what I want to do in today's video is actually walk you through what that looks like so you can identify it, even if you think your email list program is working wonderfully, and exactly how to identify it, but more importantly, what to actually do so that you can increase performance and you can go back to having growth over plateau or stagnation, right? So let's jump into my computer right here. I'm going to walk you through this really quick. I'm going to make this as quick and as value packed as possible. So this is why your email list looks healthy, but it isn't driving growth. Okay. So first and foremost, the illusion of a healthy email list. Let's get into it. Your emails probably look like this. When we're talking about campaigns, you might see good open rates, 40, 42, 50%. You might see decent click rates of, 50.50, 1%, 2%, etc. And you're making money on the back end, right? You're seeing all these recipients place orders and you're seeing some good revenue here. But if your revenue has hit a wall, if you can't seem to increase the revenue or increase the retention or the repeat purchase rates or the AOV of customers, then ultimately you might be in a quiet stall. And most brands hit this invisible ceiling within like 18 to 24 months of launching their email marketing program or investing heavily into it so that they can see good results. And even if your email marketing program doesn't feel broken, growth quietly flatlines under the surface. So the fact of the matter is sometimes you really only realize something's a problem until you start to compare performance, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, and you start to realize, hold on a second, we're doing all these different things, but ultimately our revenue is not going anywhere. So let's jump into the actual classic pattern of what that email plateau looks like. You have a beautiful, strong ramp up, post launch. There are many different brands the 6-7 figure brands that we help launch their email marketing program. And we will quite literally make $700,000 in lifetime value for a subscription brand, or we might generate $150,000 in total revenue and attributed revenue for a fishing brand or a supplement brand. We might do 250K in revenue over the first 90 days. And that sharp growth generally continues for the first 12 to 15 months. And around the 18 month, you'll start to see this little stagnation happen like this, where you saw all this incredible growth and then you kind of flatline. But along the way, you have all these great KPIs, like I mentioned earlier, your open rate, your click rates, that you're kind of stumped and you're like, why is this happening, right? There's no alarms being set off. And this is exactly why that plateau is so hard to spot it until you're actually deep in it. So let's go through this retention quiz, right? I want you to ask yourself honestly, when you think about the brand that you manage or own, number one, are your flows segmented by customer average order value, or are you just batching the same content for everybody, right? You see this in abandonment flows, right? You might have an abandoned cart flow that, depending on obviously the price point of your product and your average order value, etc., you might have a flow that is over $500 where we break off and we might be a little bit more aggressive with the incentives because we know we have bigger margins, versus a flow that might be under $250 where you're not making the best margins, but ultimately you still want to apply some sort of strategy to that so that you can get people over the line. So are your flows segmented by customer AOV, or are you batching the same content to everybody? That's the first thing you want to ask yourself. And the second question is, do you know your revenue per email? But most importantly, what's increasing or decreasing it, right? And then lastly, are your campaigns aligned to where someone is in their journey, or are you just trying to fill your calendar? And what I mean by that is, Are your campaigns aligned, and are you segmenting? Are you batching people based on, they were active and no purchased, or they might have seen a specific product and abandoned it, right? These are all different customers and different life cycle journeys. And you can't just batch them into the same email list, although you can and you will make revenue. It's much better if you actually segment this depending on the size of your email list and target them based on their specific buying journey that they're in. You're going to be able to resonate with them better. You're going to be able to hit them better with better content that's going to ultimately ring a bell in their head and say, you know what, let me actually convert. And so again, if you pause on any of these, you're not alone. Like, most teams want smarter systems, but end up stuck in this reactive cycle of like outdated strategies where they're trying to optimize like a win back flow and that gets the worst open rates out of all of them, or a sunset flow. You're trying to split test subject line and preview text on a sunset flow, and it just doesn't make sense why you would focus your time and effort on such a low needle moving activity, so to speak. So there are 3 faulty assumptions that stall growth. So I'm going to go through these one by one. Assumption number 1 is our list is engaged. I audit so many different accounts that they're like, oh, we're doing fantastic on campaigns. We're absolutely crushing it. Our list is engaged. Our average engagement is doing well. We've got phenomenal open rates and great click rates. But the thing is, you need visibility into who's consistently opening, clicking, and converting and who isn't. Don't just blindly rely on the top of the overall surface level metrics, because ultimately engagement can decay in core segments without affecting overall averages. And we can see this where you might have a 30-day engage, 90-day engage, or an active no purchase segment, and some of those will actually decay in performance while the others are doing good, and these will actually elevate the poor performing segments. And that is what gives you the illusion that your list is engaged. Not all segments are created equally. Not all of them have the same buyer psychology. And ultimately, this is one of the biggest faulty assumptions that I see in the email marketing game. Assumption number 2, our flows are optimized. We built these last year. They're only 8 months old. Like, they're brand new, they're fresh. Look, automations degrade over time. I'll say it again. Automations degrade over time. We might build a flow that is like absolutely spectacular and crushing it and does exceptionally better than whatever the brand previously had. And 6 months later, that flow will actually degrade in performance and will like have 50% effectivity. That's because there are different buyer behaviors. We have different consumer psychology. Times are always changing. Last year in 2024, we were all in on beautifully designed, elaborate emails, whereas in 2025, we're seeing that plain text emails are actually generating a little bit better engagement for some brands in particular niches. So what works 6 months ago might not work today, and what works today is most likely not going to work in the next 12 months. So even if your flows are optimized, they do need continuous testing and iteration to actually stay relevant, to actually hit, to actually resonate with your customers. So don't just think because your flows are optimized or they're fresh or they're brand new or you created some split tests 4 months ago that everything is fine and dandy under the hood with your automations, because this is another one of those deadly false assumptions. Assumption number 3, we just need a bigger email list. We just need more subscribers. If only we had more subscribers, we would make more revenue. Guys, more leads does not equal more revenue if the list quality is declining, right? There are so many brands that think that running some sort of collaboration giveaway and, capturing 100,000 profiles in like 2 months is somehow going to rocket ship them into the next tier of revenue. But ultimately, that's just not the case, right? We look at, the quality of email lists of people who are doing giveaways and they're just signing up for a freebie. These are people who are looking for something for free. That is not the same thing as someone who we put through a quiz funnel to actually determine what the best solution and product is for them based on their specific objectives and needs in relation to the product. Those 2 different email lists are totally different quality. You have one that is highly engaged. They've got skin in the game. If they've actually invested into giving something to you, in this case, their time by taking a quiz so we can give them a personalized recommendation of product. And then you have another list of people who are just looking for a handout, right? So ultimately, more leads does not equal more revenue if the actual list quality is bad. And another thing that's super important is that growth often hides deeper issues like bad deliverability, weak segmentation, or just a poor onboarding experience. Sometimes you might have these issues underlying under the surface, and you think because your list is growing so rapidly that you're actually outweighing the amount of unsubscribes that you have. You have 300 unsubscribes, you have 2,000 new subscribers, but ultimately the damage that you're doing under the surface, if you have bad deliverability or you've just got weak segmentation or just a poor user experience, is ultimately going to lead to more damage long term than actually growing your list short term. So just keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, depth beats width every time, right? We're not here to cast the widest net and get 500,000 profiles in 2 days. We want to capture the most engaged profiles, the people who get skin in the game, who invest into the brand with their time or their money or their effort. And ultimately, those are the subscribers that we actually want to nurture and actually build our email list with, because that's where the real money is. Okay. So I don't want to just throw out all the bad things that people are doing and what people are or different brands are doing wrong. I actually want to give you guys some actionable insight as to what high performing retention teams actually track. So keep in mind that retention leaders, they don't just obsess over opens and list size. We know that open rates are no longer real. We know that click rates are somewhat inflated with Apple iOS 15. You've got Apple privacy opens where it basically opens up the email and clicks a bunch of different links without you actually doing it. So these metrics are they're vanity metrics, right? So the best performers actually dial in on revenue driving metrics. And what do I mean by that? Well, number one, flow changes and optimizations. This is something that anybody can do right here, right now. You can open up your flows and you can start testing different variations or different elements within those flows, right? So don't focus on win back. Don't focus on your sunset flows. Nobody cares about those. These are people that are just highly, highly engaged and have gone through the whole consumer life cycle and are on their way out if they don't re-engage. What you do want to focus on is actually testing your highest converting flows. So these are typically going to be your welcome flow, your abandoned cart, abandoned browse, abandoned checkout, your post-purchase experience as well if you want to increase product adoption and build that identity with the brand and your product in each customer. And some of the tests that you can actually perform are short versus long content, right? Are we doing a massive email that has multiple touch points in it and has, 2 or 3 different CTAs? Will that perform better versus a shorter email where you might have the hero, you might have a call to action, and then just a short snippet and maybe a product or two that you're offering, right? That's a very big test that you can do that we see performs really well. Another thing you can do is design versus plain text variations. I was telling you about this a minute ago, where in 2025, we're seeing sort of a return to that direct response plain text working really well. And so one of the biggest strategies that we do for testing is actually running designed emails versus plain text emails, basically the same exact content, but we're doing it from this sort of person within the company, whether it's a brand manager or someone who's involved with the brand. And ultimately, we're seeing much more connectivity, a larger authenticity factor to it. And we see that performing better with some of these flow emails when we actually split test them back to back. The last test that you can run here are going to be flow delay timing. So are we sending it 1 hour after, 2 hours after, 24? Is there a 48-hour gap between these two sends? Testing that works really well, and delivering at peak engagement windows. So one of the settings that Klaviyo has, for example, is you can actually, if someone's in a flow and they trigger it, you can actually wait until, let's say, 10:15 a.m. Eastern time or recipient's time for that flow to actually deliver. So that's something that you want to do. We a lot of times we see people go into flows maybe like late night, just before dinner at 7, and then the next day they're actually going to get that second email in that flow at around the same time, but they might already be eating dinner. They might be busy with something else, right? So doing this actually helps us deliver at peak engagement windows, and we can actually see better results overall from there, okay? Another thing that high performance teams really focus on are segment activity. So measure the engagement over your 30, 60, and 90-day active segments. Track deliverability, see who's actually clicking. And based on that, you want to suppress cold subscribers to protect that sender reputation, protect your deliverability, and ultimately have tighter segments of engaged people that you know are really, really warm in the buying cycle and that you actually can hit them with the right content to get them to convert. Next thing you want to look at, revenue per recipient. So more emails does not equal more money. This is such a huge misconception in the email marketing and retention marketing world, that people think that, oh, if I make $50,000 a month on my campaigns with 6 emails, if I send 12, I'm going to make 100 grand. But that couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, you're actually creating what's called list fatigue, especially if you're not segmenting based on customer lifecycle journey and behavior and where they find themselves in that journey. So it's not about how much each sends earns, and it's definitely not how many people it reaches. It's actually about the revenue per recipient, right? Because that's what speaks to the profitability of each segment and how much revenue we're actually getting from these segments based on how warm they are, or what stage in the buying cycle they're in. Next thing is understanding the time delay between opens and clicks and purchases. So when someone looking at different cohorts in your statistics and saying, okay, how long does it take someone to join our email list with our pop-up or whatever it is, and ultimately place that first order. So understanding that time delay is really what's going to allow you to incorporate the right delay timers, the follow-up sequences, the campaign cadences, and determine a holistic approach and strategy to your email marketing program, where you are actually taking a look at data and statistics based on the time delay people have between sign up and purchase, or purchase and receive the product, or purchase first time and second time and becoming a repeat customer. So looking at these time delays and understanding how long it takes for someone to do something for your particular brand or product is ultimately something that you should be looking at, so that you can increase the performance over time and incorporate the right split test to get better performance. One of the last things we look at in our agency is subscriber velocity. So again, going back to what I was just saying, how long does it take for a new subscriber to make their first purchase? How fast do they return or churn? How long does it take them to get them into a second or third order? What is the churn rate, right? How often do first-time subscribers actually don't come back, right? That usually tells us, right? And you can see right here, this informs the onboarding, the post-purchase sequence, and the win-backs. I know that if someone is coming in, they're purchasing once, and then they're never coming back, and we don't have a high repeat purchase rate, generally it comes down to 2 things. Number 1, your product is shit. Most of the time, that's not the case, hopefully. But if that's not the case, then generally it comes down to that post-purchase sequence. How are we actually nurturing these customers? How are we actually getting them to build their identity in the brand itself? How are we getting them to use the product? How are we increasing product adoption, right? When we look at supplement brands, this is one of the biggest things that we focus on. We know that we can only continue to grow the company and grow our sales and revenue and increase the cohorts of repeat customers if we help them implement these supplements into their lives. If we give them instructions on when to actually take the supplements, debunk myths on what makes a good supplement from a bad supplement, debunk myths on, timing. Is it better to take the supplements at night, in the morning, better with meals, without meals? Should I avoid lactose or milk because it decreases the efficacy of our supplements? This is what the post-purchase funnel should look like for you, instead of just saying, hey, thanks for ordering, here's your receipt, and here's some dynamic populated, garbage in the email. Actually help them come into your world, help them understand your product, help them incorporate it into their lives. And that's how you're going to get the best performance long-term, where people actually come back and believe in your brand and want to reinvest in it. Okay. The good news is that you don't need to rebuild your email system from scratch, unless your email flows look like this giant mess of a jumble, just a giant mess. You don't actually need to throw out your strategy. You don't need to start from scratch. A lot of the brands we work with, we're doing this in-house before we came on board, and they're spread thin. They just don't have the bandwidth. So again, just start operating email more like a retention system and not just a broadcast tool where you're just throwing out promotions and discounts and, hey, look at this new collection we launched. Actually build a beautiful system out of it where you are fine-tuning all these different automations and flows based on everybody's life cycle journey and their buyer journey. Right? So actionables, audit your automations every day, every 90 days. We like to do it quarterly. What we look at are open, click, and conversion rates. We identify those drop-off points. Are they dropping off in email 3? Well, then that what is email 3? What is it all about? How can we actually optimize it? Can we change the strategy altogether and swap it out with something new so that we can eliminate that drop off point, or at least drastically reduce the drop off? Can we test new subject lines, new preview text, new time delays, product pairings, different bundles, different offers, right? That's what you want to look at and what you want to optimize when you're taking a look at your automations every quarter. And then you want to rebuild your segments. So again, so many brands don't even have these engaged segments of 30, 60, and 90 days. So many brands don't even suppress cold contacts. They don't have a sunset flow. We're actually eliminating these people if they don't engage with their emails, decreasing their Klaviyo bill, and actually improving their deliverability and their open rate metrics, click rates. And then send on real behavior, not just calendar cadence, right? So one of the things we really like to do, especially for brands that have smaller SKUs or even large SKUs with their top 5 performing products, is we'll create segments, if they have a big enough email list, of people who looked at this particular, bed sheet and they abandoned the cart. So now we can actually send that specific segment of people, of customers who looked at that specific bed sheet, and we can create an entire campaign series that is meant to get them over the edge and purchase that specific bed sheet. So we can talk about the benefits, the transformation, the incredible night's sleep that you're going to get, how much time you're actually going to save by sleeping better, and how much better your performance is going to be because you're getting good night's sleep and not, sleeping hot as hell at night. So these are just some examples of what we do in terms of actually sending based on real behavior, not just a calendar cadence where we're blasting the master list. And that's ultimately what you want to do with your brand. And then ultimately make that RPR, that revenue per recipient, your sort of overlying metric, the golden arch of what your metric should look, what you should be measuring, because that's what tells you how profitable your emails are in your actual segment. So stop tracking how many emails did we send and start asking yourself, how much revenue did this list produce per recipient? Because that's where you're going to find your best performing lists, and you're going to understand how to actually message them better. Lastly, you want to add lifecycle layers to drive lifetime value. What I mean by this is, and again, you're going to hear this recurring, I feel like a parrot saying it all over again, but lifecycle aware marketing beats that generic blast every single time. Map your entire journey. So many brand owners don't do this. So many companies actually fail to do this. What does it look like when somebody comes into your funnel? When they come onto your website, they get hit with the exit intent pop-up, or they get hit with, a 60% page scroll and they actually see the pop-up and they enter that email list. What does it look like when they first interact with your company? What are you selling them on? How are you guiding them towards the purchase? How are you building the social proof, the authenticity, the market dominance for who your brand is and what products you offer? Then what happens when they place their first purchase, right? A lot of brands think, oh, cool, I got the conversion. Our job is done here. But that's where the game actually begins, right? Getting people to come back. You're spending all this money on the front end to acquire customers, and you're just converting them once on the bottom end of the funnel. Like, don't you want them to come back and over so that you can have better profitability? You can have better profit margins, since, a second time, third time, fourth time customer, you don't have to pay for them all over again to acquire them in the first place. So this is where the game really begins. What happens after that first purchase? How are you guiding them through the post-purchase flow that I was mentioning just now? How are you helping them incorporate the products into their lives? Repeat, and then churn prevention, right? Where are customers dropping off? Where are they unsubscribing? For subscription brands, one of the main things we focus on is, okay, we have a hair growth supplement brand, for example, and we want to make sure that clients are getting the right results. So you don't just allow them to buy the product and then forget about them and like, good luck, we'll see you on the other side if you do or don't get results. We have an entire 6-month funnel totally and completely laid out, where we are telling people exactly what to expect every step of the way, so that we can build consistency in product use, reliability in actually using the product, and then ultimately we're coaching them towards the result. We did the hard part of getting them over the line and into our ecosystem. Now we have to do them the service of helping them incorporate the product so that they can get the results that they were looking at in the beginning when they first came to our welcome flow and our website, right? So again, you just have some more information here, but ultimately the end of the game here is we want to extend the customer lifetime value and not just capture it once. Think product adoption. Think reducing buyer's remorse. Think building customer identity in your products. That's what's going to give you the best performance and the best results over time. So, final reminders, final takeaways. Most brands don't realize they plateaued until it's too late. And even though the numbers say stable and beautiful on the front end, on the top end, while performance declines underneath, here's the shift to actually turn things around. Okay. Think more holistically about your email marketing and retention program as a whole. Stop guessing. Start measuring what actually matters, not empty, useless vanity metrics. Stop filling your calendar with random campaigns and start building a life cycle system. Start identifying different customer behaviors and different stages in the buyer journey so that you can actually generate better content and generate better revenue from that content. And then stop chasing volume. This obsession of 20, 30, 40, 50 emails a month has to stop. Start increasing the value in your emails. Start giving people more information and empowering them and giving them more value so that they can feel confident in your products. They can invest in your products because they know that you are out there to take care of them and look out for them and help them in life, and not just drain their bank account and their wallet by using urgency and scarcity and all these little gimmick things that work on the front end. But ultimately, you want to build an enterprise value. You want to build real company value in your products and your customers. And that's how you do it. Not by sending hundreds of different emails just promoting blasts, but sending a few emails that actually provide value and get people to invest deeper into your brand. So if you're going to walk away with something, your list doesn't need to be bigger. You just needs to work harder. Okay. If that helps, let me know. Drop a comment. We'll talk later. Peace out, everybody. Peace, peace, peace.